Hello and welcome to the show. This week's FailRace versus the community was A-Class cars from Asia. Our first race was at the Silverstone GP circuit. My Hyundai had started right at the back of the pack. And as we come into Mags and Beckett's for the first time, you see the straight line speed of this car. My Hyundai is incredibly quick in a straight line, not too bad through the corners, which means I was trying my best to make my way quickly through the field, going around the outside of a Nissan Skyline to get myself the inside for the next corner. A Kia Ceed was following me through. I'm pretty sure they were 3 wide further back there. I choose to stay out wide just to let them sort all of themselves out. I don't want to be involved in that. And I know I've got the straight line speed to get away with it. One of the quickest cars in a straight line in this particular race. May have got a little bit carried away by the speed into the corner at the end of the straight, run a tiny bit wide, kept my car on the track, everybody goes streaming back past me. I keep it around the outside. I'm pretty sure they were 2 or 3 wide on that corner on the inside of me. I managed to get back past them. Something or other has a dive, Lexus thing has a bit of a dive. I got a little bit of a bump in that. It was quite frankly a chaotic start for me, and I continued to make progress through the field quite quickly. As I said, this car is incredibly quick in a straight line. As we can see coming out of the first corner, I outdrag a Nissan 300ZX and a Mitsubishi Evo, all before we get to Maggots and Beckett's. Yeah, I tend not to normally run aero on a car for versus the community because I like having a bit more straight line speed. This car was so fast I could get away with put aero on and still be quicker than almost everything here in a straight line and be pretty good through the corner. I was really surprised just how good the Hyundai Genesis was. The Kia Ceed was also making its way through the field, pretty much following my progress through this race. This time caught up to the back of the Nissan, and as they come on to one of the back straights, you're going to see an unusual sight. Yes, the Kia Ceed is actually faster than the Nissan in a straight line. It's not what I expected, I'll be honest. Remember, the Kia Ceed here is front-wheel drive, one of the very few front-wheel drive cars that we would have had in this lobby. It's to the inside at the chicane, and the Nissan decides not to fight too much, not slow himself down too much, not risk a crash, and keep it all together. And then through bridge, the Nissan's too far back. The Kia has got a little bit too much grip. There was a bit of a lag crash on the opening lap. This Honda came off one of the worst from it. Didn't actually suffer too much damage, just got spun across the track. The Honda was to pull off an impressive overtake, probably overtake of the evening. I've never seen somebody do this particular manoeuvre around the outside of the first part of Maggots and Beckett's as a Skyline rolls in the background and the Lexus goes sliding. You normally see perhaps around the outside of the second corner or the second part of Maggots and Beckett's. Not very often you go around the outside of the first part. That's a tough place to get an overtake line, especially with the Lexus sliding on your inside, and to cap it all, the Skyline fell over in the background. The Kia Ceed continued his charge through the field, catching up to the back of the Datsun, another car that was very, very quick in a straight line. Perhaps they were around the same actually between me and the Datsun. The Datsun had perhaps just a tiny little bit more straight line speed, but the Datsun didn't have the cornering. We come around the final corner, it just couldn't get it turned in. The Kia dives up the inside and gets the place fairly easily. However, the Ceed doesn't have the straight line speed to fend off the Datsun as they come around onto the start-finish line. Datsun is absolutely flying, gets to the inside up towards turn 1, but as I said, Datsun doesn't really have the grip. The Kia can keep around the outside. It's pretty tough to do. It's pretty scary going too wide through the opening corner. Still, the Datsun is trying to find its way back past and can outdrag the Kia into Maggots and Beckett's section. This is where you can sometimes get around the outside. More commonplace to see an overtake, and the Kia does. You're on the inside for the next particular corner, but this is almost irrelevant in some respects. We know what's going to happen the minute we get on the straight, and the Datsun is off. The Kia cannot do a huge amount about it. The Kia is not a slow car in a straight line either. It's it just can't live with the speed of the Datsun, but it is much better through the corners. So as we round the corner at the end of the straight, the Datsun was well ahead. It is now struggling with the handling, and again down this next section, the Datsun can scamper away a bit in the straights, but it's finding himself having to go defensive and just can't carry the speed through the corners. The Kia goes quite a long way around the outside and keeps it all the way around the outside. That's another pretty damn tough manoeuvre to get away with. We're on another straight, and sure enough, The Datsun cruises up to the back. Kia doesn't even bother going defensive, doesn't feel the need to. The Datsun is on the inside but doesn't have the grip. The Kia can keep around the outside of the first part, which puts you on the inside for the next bit. And then we come to the final section of track, which is very tight and very twisty, and the Datsun just can't carry the corner speed. It can't keep up through these next few corners, and then that would be too far back to make the most of its straight line speed when it comes to the straight. So the Kia finally gets the position. At the front, it's been a fairly uneventful race for the NSX. It got to the lead on the opening lap. He fought his way through the field on the very opening lap and then promptly vanished off at the front. I tried my best to keep up with it, I just couldn't. The NSX was too fast for the Hyundai, about half a second a lap different. Wasn't a huge margin. As I said, I was really pleased with the Genesis. It was far quicker than I had expected it to be, but I couldn't keep up with the NSXR. It was just, yeah, far too fast. So the Honda would take the victory from my Hyundai in second, while a Kia Ceed would make it onto the podium, which is quite an impressive achievement, really, for a Ceed. Elsewhere, there was to be an interesting last lap duel for what I think was 10th or 11th place between a couple of Mazdas as they round the final corner. The RX-7 just running a little bit too wide. The Mazda 3 gets to the inside, and then we've pretty much got a drag race to the finish line between these two cars. The Mazda has the position. The RX-7 actually gets a little bit of a slide through the final corner, but he can't do anything about it, and the Mazda 3 will take it. That was the point the replay cut off at the end of the race timer as well. Our second race went to the Sedona Club Circuit. While I quite like this track, the first corner can often be a little bit of a pain, as it's a very wide start line into a very tight hairpin. I hugged the inside this time, hoping to avoid the chaos. It kind of, well, there was chaos. A Datsun got a little bit too fast into that corner, bounced himself off somebody's car and spun around in front of the pack. Yeah, that doesn't end well. I had to do some rallycross. I got away with it. My Hyundai survived it by doing a bit of rallycross across the grass, but I did lose a fair amount of time. I managed to simply out-drag a Starion. That's the speed that you get in this Genesis. It could out-drag so many cars and still have some decent handling. I had managed to survive the opening lap though. At the front, it was a Mitsubishi Galant that led the way from another Genesis. I think it was the only other Hyundai I saw in the, the entire evening as they round the first corner. The Galant was perhaps a little bit better on the handling front, however, just didn't have the speed, as the Genesis would cruise up alongside him, just drive around him. Pretty much. That is a serious amount. It's also quite a hard place to overtake. Going up that hill is not a fun place to pull a pass on, particularly, and then the Genesis will blast away down the straights. Hyundai, I think they're really quite underrated cars. In third place, there was a Subaru, I can never remember, it's the unicorn car, S204? Is that right? That sounds right. I think it's got a humongous exhaust. That's very shiny, massive exhaust. Interesting rear diffuser as well on this car. Not seen one of them before. Either way, he was being caught up to by an NSX, and straight up again, NSX absolutely flies past. Even on a track like this is not a track that really relies too heavily on straight line speed. You need good handling. You need good handling for quite a few high speed and nasty corners on this track. But even then, if you have that little bit more straight line speed, it can make your overtaking quite a lot easier, as I found myself battling with a Prelude in the background. It wasn't long before the NSX would catch up to what was now second place Mitsubishi. I was coming along to join in the fun as well. It'd be a similar story really for the Galant. While it did a decent-ish job most of the time through the corners, may have run a little bit wide, just lacked the straight line speed. There are a few cars that we saw in this that were just struggling for straight line, even everything being built up to the maximum PI and A-class. Cars just couldn't, some of the cars just couldn't keep up with the straight line speed of the NSXs, and my Hyundai would make short work again of the Mitsubishi coming up towards turn 1. Mitsubishi thought about trying to go the long way around at the outside, just couldn't do it. Doesn't really have the grip or the brakes. So yeah, it was a fairly straightforward sort of manoeuvres through the field for me and the NSX as we outdragged pretty much everything. The Subaru would drop back to 5th, and for the final few laps of the race would be locked in an epic battle with a Toyota Supra. Bear in mind, this Supra was one of the cars that got spun round in the first corner crash. He did well. The Supra was mighty fast considering the amount of damage it had to have worked his way back up here and was hounding the Subaru for 5th place. The problem with Sedona is it can be quite a tough place to overtake. There are 2 good overtaking spots really. The corner they've just gone around there, which the Supra was a bit too far back on, and the first corner. They are about the only places you can really sensibly have an overtake. The rest of the track is very, very hard. This corner here is far too long and it's not a very big braking zone to really do very much. You have to have a significantly better car to get a pass done. The Supra gets great drive, but they come up towards a very nasty chicane, this one. You can't fit 2 cars wide through there very easily. And the Supra backs out, very wisely backs out of it. There's also horrible sticky sand that if your car goes a little bit wide gets stuck on and you just lose all of your speed. So yeah, that's a real no-no place for doing an overtake. The first corner, the Supra is right underneath the rear wing of the Impreza. Gets to the inside at turn 1, but outbrakes himself, runs a little bit wide. The Subaru does the cutback and manages to regain his position for now. Turn 1 is your best bet to get an overtake done around this track, and on this particular lap the Supra just overcooked it a little bit too much. I was battling with the NSX over 2nd place, trying to find my way past, and I was also finding it very difficult to make an overtake stick. Towards turn 1 I tried to be brave and go around the outside. I managed to keep my car there. I was very surprised to find when I came out the other side I was still side by side with the Honda. Problem is he has the inside for the hill and I just didn't have the grip. I didn't trust my car enough to hold it around the outside, so I had to concede and the NSX just got a little bit of breathing space. Yes, I was very quick in a straight line, but as we come up towards the next good overtaking spot, just too far back. I couldn't try anything. The NSX is billowing a bit of smoke. I was struggling with a bit of rear end grip, but I couldn't do anything about it. These two were still at it, fighting over the 5th place. The Supra got to the inside as they come into turn 1. This time doesn't overshoot, makes sure he gets his car stopped on the apex of the corner. The Subaru can't do a cutback this time. And finally, after I think it was about 4 laps of battling, the Supra had got himself up to 5th place. And it lasted all of a corner. Got a little bit too much on the grass, a big twitch from the Toyota. Well, good control to stop it from doing anything silly. But the Subaru is back past again, as he can simply outdrag him into the next corner. The Supra is just a little bit too far back, can't have a dive, and yeah, can't do anything now. I think this one's on the final lap as well. Just ran out of places to get an overtake done. It's too far back through this next corner, a little bit out of position through here as well, and as they run towards the fast chicane, if you're very quick through the fast chicane you could get an overtake, but the Supra was too far back. And while all of that excitement was going on, the race victory would go to a Hyundai Genesis. Got to the lead, I think it was on lap 2 or 3, stayed there, didn't make any silly mistakes, and yeah, basically stayed out of trouble. He was being caught rather rapidly by me and the NSX towards the end, but we ran out of laps. We couldn't catch up quick enough, so there was going to be 2 Genesises on the podium with an NSX in second. I highly enjoyed that race. It was great fun, even though I couldn't pass the NSX in the end. It was still a very, very good fun race. Our third and final race would go to the Twin Ring Montegi East circuit. I think I can never remember these bloody alternate track layouts. Yeah, this again has another first corner that is a little bit of a pain. Again, a long straight, fairly wide straight. The Subaru we're following decides that it's better to put his car on the grass to avoid the chaos that was going on in front. A Civic would be parked on the track and absolutely destroy my Genesis. I couldn't see it. I was stuck behind an Eclipse. And the Subaru that we were following got through the chaos probably the best. Out of all of the cars that were behind the silly accidents, the Subaru somehow managed to survive all of it and come out actually relatively well. Down the straight, the car we're following didn't really have the straight line speed. The Datsun has a dive up the inside. The MX-5 is having a look as well. Datsun keeps himself on the inside, but can't really do any. Doesn't quite have the acceleration through this next corner. The Subaru can fairly easily hold it around the outside. Up towards the next corner, the RX-7 in front was struggling for rear end grip, goes for a big slide. The Subaru gets past the Datsun, then goes around the outside of the RX-7. It's always scary going around the outside of a car that doesn't have very much grip. That's a very scary thing to be attempting in any racing really, and 2 Mazda MX-5 Superlights were to find that as they got caught up behind the RX-7 that was monumentally quick in a straight line, but was sideways through the corners. See, as they leave this corner, they were all pretty much side by side, and as they blast down the straight, well, the RX-7 is gone. It really was very quick in a straight line, but had absolutely no grip, and the black and red MX-5 goes all the way around the outside of that corner. The MX-5 we're following tried, couldn't quite carry the speed, couldn't quite get around the outside, and all the meantime, there was a Mitsubishi Eclipse there ready to pounce if anything would go wrong. At the front, there was to be a change for the lead. The Nissan 370Z had led for a few opening laps, was gradually caught by a Mazda 2 that would make a pass into the final corner. Ignore the sort of the Civic and the Yaris. These cars were all a lap down, including my Hyundai somewhere. They had to get a push back to the pits. Yeah, Mazda 2 was a very quick car. It was very fast accelerating. I think its actual top speed was perhaps not quite as quick as the 370Z, but it got to its top speed a lot faster out of the corners. So yeah, the 370Z was having a tough time keeping up with the Mazda. I wasn't expecting a Mazda 2 to be a car necessarily that would be at the front of these races, but it was leading, and the 370Z was having a tough time keeping up. As I said, I had to get a push back to the pits. The Yaris gave me a push to the pits to get my car fixed up, and then we proceeded to have a battle over, well, pretty much nothing. I was 15th and 16th, sorry, and 2 laps down. The Yaris was 15th and a lap down, but screw it, we might as well have fun with our 2 cars, and we proceeded to have probably the best battle of the entire race, spending a lot of laps side by side running down the back straight. This is a corner I really don't like. I can never take this corner well. I decided it was better to just back out of that manoeuvre, not bother trying to go around the outside. Yaris in front of me gets all of the twitchy on the exit of that corner. I can't do anything, I have to slam on the brakes to avoid it. Again, I get a good run through this next corner. I'm around the outside though, and it's quite a long way. If you can hold it around the outside, you will be on the inside for the next corner. I can't do it. Again, thought about the outside of this one, still didn't really quite have the grip. The Yaris ends up getting a little bit twitchy on the exit, which allows me to get past. I run a little bit too deep. I thought the Yaris was going to get straight back past me. Fortunately for me, the Yaris also outbraked himself, so I had managed to get, well, I got past him. It wasn't really for anything. At the front, and things had closed up a little bit. The Nissan had got his act together and was right back on the tail of the Mazda, but was finding it difficult to overtake. Twin Ring is not the hardest track for overtaking, actually. There's plenty of spots you can do it. The 370Z had a go at this corner, but couldn't get it done. He got to the inside of one, but then he just stuck on the outside for the next corner that's much longer, and still the 370Z is stuck on the outside and a little bit too far back to really try a dive into the next corner. The run down the back straight, and the Mazda has the acceleration out of the corner, and the Nissan is just a little bit too far back. Like, most of these corners are fairly sensible overtaking opportunity. There's a couple that are a bit dodgy, but most of these corners, you know, it's a fairly sensible place for overtaking. The problem is the Mazda can just out-drag the Nissan. It can out-accelerate the Nissan to every corner. Once they eventually get up to just towards the end of the straight, the Nissan starts reeling the Mazda back in. But the Mazda's too far away. The Nissan can't, it's not got that much better brakes. It can't have a dive from that far back. And the Mazda can keep hold of the position. I think the Mazda might have still been front wheel drive. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, that is how the race would end. The Nissan couldn't catch up to the Mazda 2, couldn't find a way past, and would have to settle for second place. So it's an unlikely victor in the third race. Didn't expect a Mazda 2 at all to be taking victory. The Nissan would get second place, while the Subaru, the police Subaru, would end up in third. There we go. A fairly close third was there just in case anything silly happened between the two leaders. Well, mine and the Yaris' race carried on even after the leaders had finished. While we waited for the end of race timer, we continued to squabble over next to nothing and spend most of our laps side by side. Literally, this race over absolutely nothing was the most exciting race on the entire. It was great fun. Our cars were absolutely destroyed aero, but still finding ways to battle. I was still having to get creative with the overtaking. Trying to get past this Yaris was quite difficult. It's so small and light. Again, had very good acceleration, similar to the Mazda and the Nissan really. The Yaris had great acceleration out of the corners. In the end, the Hyundai just had a little bit more top speed, and the Hyundai was a much more planted car. As we come down towards the final corner, I'm just sort of sitting in the slipstream, trying to get as much out of the Hyundai as I can. The Yaris goes defensive. I don't even bother going for an overtake into this final turn, because I know my best bet is into turn 1. Out of the corner, fairly similar acceleration. As I said, the Yaris perhaps a little bit lighter, a little bit quicker on the acceleration front, and then comes the power from the Hyundai. I can now drag him down towards turn 1. It's not by a huge amount, it's not massively comfortable. The Yaris gets brave, tries around the outside of the first corner. It's a very tough overtaking maneuver to do, and coming towards these next corners, I don't really like these. These are quite nasty corners. Fortunately for me though, the Yaris liked them even less, and as we run through here, ignore the Subaru, they'd already finished the race. The Yaris got up on 2 wheels and became all twitchy all of a sudden and promptly fell off the track, meaning that I was victorious in our little battle. I really like the Hyundai. Hyundai was a really very good car. Really surprised me just how quick that thing was. It was as quick around Silverstone as my Acura NSX, and that's a blooming fast car. So yeah, I was a little bit disappointed that I didn't get a win with the Hyundai, because it's probably one of the best A-class cars that I've ever built. But there was still plenty of good fun racing with these vehicles. Anyway, that is it for this one. The next FailRace versus the community shall be taking place on September the 11th. That is on Thursday. We shall be running on Forza 5, and the cars. Sorry, my voice gave up. And the cars that we will be using are B-class modern cars. Often in these races, lots of people turn up with classic cars because you can do more to them. So, because they tend to start off with lower PI and you can get more upgrades, etc. So we're going to run modern vehicles, cars made in 2010 or sooner. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. We'll see some different vehicles, hopefully. Who knows? Who knows what will happen? If you wish to sign up and take part, I'll put a link in the description to our forums. Find the FailRace versus the community section, and that is where you go. However, that is it for today. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, a goodbye.